Good morning from Washington, D.C., and Happy New Year to my friends and colleagues around the country and in Israel. I hope everyone is safe, well, and healthy. I'm Josh Cram, Executive Director of Middle East Affairs and Executive Director of our U.S.-Israel Business Initiative at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And we're delighted to host this briefing on infrastructure projects in Israel, and in particular, the Haifa Port Company privatization. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is the largest business organization in the world and represents the interests of about 3 million companies of all sizes and in all sectors. For the last decade or so, the Chamber has been home to the U.S.-Israel Business Initiative, which is a national business council focused on advancing the commercial relationship between the U.S. and Israel in all ways, shapes, and forms. We work closely with both of our governments to boost economic and commercial ties. And in particular, I want to thank Benji Krasna, the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of Israel, Maya Yaron from Ministry of Foreign Affairs for working with us to put this session together. I also know my old friend, Yael Ravia Tzadok, who runs the economic shop at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is online, and great to have her back. I also want to thank my colleagues at the U.S. Department of Commerce and U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, including Robin Kessler and Susan Hedelman and Naomi Weigler for all that you do to work with us and support the U.S.-Israel commercial relationship. We've been talking a lot about infrastructure in Israel lately here at the Chamber. Just about 3 weeks ago, we hosted Israel's Minister of Energy, Yuval Steinitz, for a discussion about what's coming down the pike in terms of energy infrastructure. And it's clear there's massive growth happening in Israel today, and new construction that you can't miss if you're driving around the country. From trans-city rail lines, underground metro system that's new in Tel Aviv, new power plants powered by natural gas and renewable energy, the largest water desal plants in the world, and beyond. Today, we're having a session that's focused on the transportation sector broadly, as well as the recently announced privatization of the Haifa Port Company and what that specific opportunity looks like. So let me say at the top, the Chamber would love to see more U.S. companies bidding and ultimately succeeding in these major national projects in Israel. Israel is certainly no stranger to American companies. There are more than 300 U.S. multinational companies that have R&D centers in Israel. And of course, major U.S. companies are involved with some of the nationally important infrastructure projects in Israel, such as GE's power station in Hadera, or just more recently, Chevron acquiring Noble Energy. Chevron's announcement that they're going to be acquiring Noble Energy and taking over Noble's assets in the Eastern Med Basin. So we hope to promote that. We want to work more closely with the government of Israel to promote these projects, to help bring new investors and new companies into the Israeli market. And we're happy to be a hub for information on government tenders, new privatization plans, to really help get the word out amongst the private sector about these opportunities. We have a lot that we're going to try to do in the next hour. And of course, we're going to leave time for questions and answers at the end. But we have a lot of folks that we're going to hear from. If you do have questions, you can submit them in the chat box, and then I will get to them, and we'll try to get to all of them as they come through. So certainly submit your questions in the chat box throughout the program, and then we'll turn to questions at the end.
Agreements that were achieved in the last 2 weeks with the Emirates, Bahrain, and we are looking forward for other countries to join the agreement, is actually changing dramatically this sphere of being an island. And it will reflect a lot the possibilities of infrastructure. If you look at the port of Haifa, and Eshel will talk about it, we are privatizing now the port of Haifa. 2 weeks ago, it was a project of privatizing the port of Haifa. But now it has a strategic meaning, because the port of Haifa can be connected, the Gulf of Haifa can be connected to the Persian Gulf. We have a project named Peace Railway that will connect the port of Haifa with the ports of Abu Dhabi and Dubai through Jordan, Saudi Arabia. And if you think about it, containers and other cargo can come from the US to the Mediterranean, from Europe to the port of Haifa, and there from a port of Haifa by railways all the way to the Persian Gulf, and from there all the east is open, China and other eastern countries. A part of it will turn Haifa and some areas in Jordan to a logistic hub to spread cargo all over the Mediterranean, to Iraq, to Syria, to Lebanon, things that we were not even trying to imagine only 2 weeks ago. The city of Eilat is in the south of Israel. It lay along the Red Sea. It's a kind of isolated, and all of a sudden, it will be open to a lot of commercial movements through Red Sea to bypass the need to go through the Suez Canal, which is very expensive. Having said that, it makes us think to connect the port of Eilat with railways again to the center of Israel. So all of a sudden we are facing possibilities that we were not even dreaming for only 2 weeks ago. And it's dramatic change and brings a lot of opportunities and a lot of need for investors and international companies that can help us handle such huge projects financially and from an infrastructure perspective, a lot of knowledge that is needed for such huge projects. The other topic I wanted to discuss is transportation, ground transportation. Israel suffers lack of infrastructure. We suffer lack of railways. The railway system is not that developed. Just recently, we start to invest a lot, huge amount of money in bringing more service to more areas of the country. We used to have one major line between the city of Haifa and the city of Tel Aviv. We called it the coastal line. And now we are connecting other parts of Israel to the center, to the city of Tel Aviv, where most of the business are located. The policy of the current Minister of Transportation, Brigadier General Miri Regev, is to connect Israel. It means to connect all parts of Israel, the peripheria, and to make Israel, which is not such a big country, into one large area that will allow, by the infrastructure, will allow companies to spread and not to be located just in the center. This lack of infrastructure, roads and railways, bring a lot of traffic jams, and this is something that we are facing. We are trying to invest in mass transportation, like we are about to end the first underground line for light train in the city of Tel Aviv. We call it the Red Line. We'll end this project that cost more than $5 billion in end of 2022. We are starting now 2 other lines to connect east areas, east suburbs of Tel Aviv with the center of Tel Aviv, and the southern suburbs of Tel Aviv with the center and north of Tel Aviv. And those 2 lines will be a project that the budget is around let's say, $10 billion. Later on, the year of 2030, 10 years from now, we have a plan to open a metro system that will connect most of the cities in the center of Israel. And this is a project worth around $55 billion. So those are just some projects that we are facing and having in the center of Israel around the city of Tel Aviv. Smaller projects we are having in other metropolises in Israel, the metropolitan of the city of Haifa, Be'er Sheva, and of course Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, we are having already an operative light train line, and we are about to enlarge it with 8 more lines. So these are some, in a nutshell, some words about the infrastructure concerned to infrastructure. All tenders are international tenders. We are welcoming international companies to help us in those PPP projects. And we are very happy to cooperate with international companies that will bring international know-how and help us to develop those infrastructure. Last thing that I would like to discuss and to share with you is technology. We are having a lot of, as a ministry that would like to boost the logo and the slogan of Israel as a startup nation. We are involved and we are investing in a lot of startups that are bringing innovation in various fields of mobility. As a ministry, as a regulator, we just finished to publish the autonomous car law to allow all 5 levels of autonomous car use. And we are about to start large experiments and testing for autonomous cars that will be involved in operative areas, not just in polygons of closed areas. So this is the major field of innovation. A part of it, there are a lot of other fields of innovation that we are experimenting. Drones, colors for roads, type of road that will serve as energy to bring energy to electric cars, etc., etc. We'll be more than happy to answer a lot of other questions that you have. I don't want to take much of the other speakers' time. That was really in a nutshell. We have a lot other things to discuss and to present to you. Those of you that will be interested can approach us through the embassy, through Josh. They have all of our contacts and we'll be more than happy and pleased to answer whatever question will come to us. So thank you so much for your time and hope you'll enjoy this presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to open up the section on the Haifa privatization project. And I'll give you some background about Israel's port industry as background to the more detailed information you'll get as we move forward. First of all, as this slide shows, Israel's ports are critical to Israel's economic viability and growth, with 99% of all of its trade coming through its seaports. As you show here, last year we did about 58 million tons of cargo through our ports. About 500,000 tons came through by airport, and also 500,000 by truck from Jordan, which was composed of both imports and exports between Israel and Jordan, as well as transit traffic from Haifa to Jordan. Israel's economy is highly dependent upon its trade, and therefore the port infrastructure is one of the most important pieces of infrastructure that Israel has. If you look at the next slide, you see that Israel is located in a very strategic location, very close to the main traffic lanes between the Suez Canal and the Strait of Gibraltar, where almost all of the main traffic shipping lines move. We have a very, very short deviation distance from the main lines, and so therefore there is some strategic advantage from the seaside to visit Israel's ports. On the other side, on the land side, and you'll see the next slide. Next slide. Okay, you've heard a number of the speakers today speak about the evolving changes in the geopolitical relationships in our regional area, and this slide shows the distances overland from Haifa to various areas in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and the Gulf states, as opposed to the traditional maritime distances for cargoes between the United States and Europe to those locations. Very clearly, the Haifa alternative has economical advantages due to the reduction in transit time and transit distances, as well as savings from Suez Canal tariffs. So both from the seaside on the Mediterranean side, as well as the land side, Israel is strategically located for further development of its seaports. Next slide. Okay, a little historical background. Israel's cargo traffic over the last 3 decades has increased almost annually 3.8%. The only time we've had dips is when the United States got sick. Back in 2001 and 2002, we had the global recession, as well as in 2008. We did see some downturn in our cargoes, but the downturn here in Israel was significantly less than the downturn in most of the ports around the world. You'll see it in the next slide, for example. You'll see the same type of information about container traffic, where once again you see continuously growing traffic through our seaports. Once again, with the exception of the 2001 recession, as well as 2008. For your information, this year, most of the ports around the world are seeing someplace between 5 and 10% dip in traffic due to the COVID situation. We actually saw a 2.6, year to date, we have a 2.6% increase in total cargo through our ports, excluding fuel. And even our container traffic has grown almost 1% if you exclude transshipment traffic during the same period. Next slide. Here you see a split between cargo during 2009. On the right side, based upon the geographical locations. For example, in Haifa, you see 29 million tons. That includes both the Haifa Port Company, which is being privatized, as well as some other operators in the Haifa Port area, including the grain terminals, the fuel terminal, and the chemical terminals. You see likewise Ashdod, Eilat, and Israel shipyards. On the left side, you see the breakdown by types of cargo. What you see throughout these few slides is that Israel's economy, despite all of its challenges, still seeing growth in its trade. And my final slide here talks a little bit about the seaport reform. Since 2004, when the original reform package was approved by the Knesset, we've gone through a series of 3 or 4 reforms. The first one in 2005 was the most significant. Up to that point, we had the Israel Ports Authority, which was both the port property owner, the port developer, operator, marine services provider, as well as regulator. This organization was set up in 65. As a result of recommendations of the Director General of the New York Port Authority, New York, New Jersey Port Authority, when Israel went to the World Bank to fund the development of Ashdod Port. In 2005, the port industry was reformed, and Israel Port Authority, which was a huge monopoly and very bureaucratic organization, was broken up into several different organizations in order to streamline the port industry. First, the regulatory functions were split off and sent to the Ministry of Transport, where they set up a shipping and ports administration that continues to be the regulator of both Israel shipping lines as well as the seaports. The second organization that was set up was the Israel Ports Company, which has a national and public interest to promote Israel's port infrastructure and assure development of its infrastructure so that we meet all trade needs of the country. One of the things that we're most proud of in the Israel Ports Company, we provide common services for all of our shipping and port companies. But we developed over 10 years ago a national trade platform through which over 100% of all of our container traffic is managed. The port terminals, the shipping lines and agents and customs, the freight forwarders, customs agents, trucking, railways, and importers and exporters are all part of this massive platform, which has eliminated all of Israel's trade paperwork in terms of traffic of containers through our ports. I think we're very proud to say that we're the only country in the world that has developed such a platform, which is available 24/7, even on Yom Kippur, which is next week, for those who want to use it, and has eliminated all paper, creating a very green, environmental and economic platform that's used by all of the port users. And finally, the third set of organizations that were set up were the terminal operators, who have a business and commercial interest. They handle all the cargoes, and they're responsible for handling cargoes. And some of those companies were originally government-owned companies, all of which were supposed to undergo privatization. We privatized a lot port company back in 2013. As you know, we are now in the process of privatizing the Haifa Port Company and hopefully in the future, the Ashdod Port Company. So with this introduction to the background on the Israel port industry, I turn it over to those who are going to talk a little bit more detail about the Haifa Port privatization.
Okay, firstly, I'm really happy to be here. Eventually, we're doing something right because, I'm very excited about the way the American and the Israeli side are working. This morning, we had a session with the people from the DFC and the Export-Import Bank. And last week, the commercial attaché of the American Embassy came to see Haifa Port. And a week before, I got a call from our guys in DC. So something is working right here. And I'm saying this because, if we want American companies to participate, we have to reach out. So this is what we're doing. We're reaching out. We're open to provide information. And basically, the aim of this short session is to make you intrigued enough to look for more information, to participate on the 15th of October in a webinar that we're going to put together, and later on to show your initial interest for bidding on the 29th of October. So remember these dates. Talking about the Haifa port, what can I say? I mean, I'm completing what Dov was saying. We're talking about a country that its growth figures are fantastic. We're talking about a country that is demographic figures are going up all the time. So the scarcity of ownership of any infrastructure is evident. I mean, if you own the Haifa port and you're going to own it till 2054, you're probably, I'm not sure, I don't know, but you're probably going to own the last port, or perhaps the last port that's going to be privatized for many, many, many years to come. And putting this into the context of what Dov was talking about in terms of the geopolitical changes, then I think this is a very exciting opportunity in terms of strategic vision. And we are looking, and I don't know who are the 62 participants, and if they come from financial entities or operational entities, but anyone who's coming for this deal has to look to the long run. And we're looking also for someone who will treat this asset as a strategic asset of the State of Israel. But I don't have only to convince you about the strategic appeal of this business. I want to talk about the financial appeal of this business. And when we are talking about a Haifa port, and yes, it is true, it is a port that's going into competition. No, I wanted the first slide, actually. But we have a very strong balance sheet, and we have prepared the company for this competition. And I'll talk about it very briefly, because the only way to go deeper into the figures is to participate in the roadshow. But just to give you a spoiler about that, I will say that first, we have finalized a very dramatic downsize in the workforce. Secondly, we have created opportunities for shifting some of our container business to general cargo business. And thirdly, and this is written here, the waterfront development is really a very, very exciting commercial real estate opportunity. And we will show you a slide, but we're actually selling waterfront and a port together in one package. Talking about the financial figures of the port. Now is a good time to go to that slide. We're talking about a solid company that has a continuing growth. We're talking about very nice figures in terms of EBITDA. And we're talking about a port that, according to international benchmarks, and of course in Israel, by far, we are the most efficient port in terms of boxes per crane and boxes per ship. And that's because we have a very good workforce. They argue a lot, but when they work, and they're the best in Israel. Why do we have a blue box in the middle of this slide that says 3 billion shekels? Okay, the amount of the cash that's in the company right now is about 1 billion shekels. But on top of that, in order to make this deal very attractive, the bidder, the buyer, will be able to leave in the port as part of the the company's capital, another 1 billion shekels, but he will have to use them for infrastructure and for utilizing the port, including creating another package for early retirement. So this is the 2nd million, and the 3rd billion is 1 billion shekels that the company will receive from IPA and from other governmental entities, and they also will be for infrastructure. So all this is to strengthen the position of the consortium to invest in the port and to invest in its infrastructure. Now, when I said that, I was asked, just a second, So what are you saying, that the port, the infrastructure of the port now is so bad and so old that you have to invest 1 billion now? No, not at all. The infrastructure is, and I'm talking about the equipment, is quite new, but we're talking about investments up to 2037. Let me talk a little bit about the seafront. The seafront is, you know what? Let's go for a minute back to the slide of the map of the port. You can see here, this is the port, and on the right side, you have the area of the general cargo. In the middle, you have two terminals for containers, but the whole left side, what's written here as the waterfront development, all this very long quay is going to transfer into a seafront with 40,000 square meters approved already for business, and another 21,000 square meters for commercial usage, and 200 hotel rooms, another 500 residential apartments that won't be owned by the port, but the government is going to pay us for taking that area, 150 million shekels. So actually, this real estate opportunity is really rare when you look at other strips like that, not only in Israel, but all over the world. You won't find a lot of waterfronts that are so beautiful in terms of watching on one side the Carmel Mountain and on the other side the naval port. I think that this is really something that you should look into, and any group that will bid will have to have an understanding in developing a commercial real estate. So if to sum all this, I'd like to say that we are open to show you all our figures, all our assessments. We have prepared the port, the company for competition. We believe that it's very, very important that the port will be privatized. We wanted the port to be privatized in a way that it will be sold 100% to the group. So there will be no involvement in the decision-making by the government, no golden share, only the interests of a private company. And at the end, we were able to convince the government to go by this way. I really think that this is something that American companies should look into. I think that I'm very happy that the different governmental agencies have taken interest. I can tell you that 2 weeks ago, Ofer, the CEO, the general manager, and the minister visited the port. We were talking about this, and she said, yes, this is very important. A day after, I got a phone call from Professor Simchon, that is the economic advisor to the PM, and he told me, listen, what do you need? And the day after that, I started getting phone calls. So reaching out and also providing the time for American companies to get together, perhaps with Israeli companies, this is something we should look into. I'm telling you, we're pressing the time, but it's more important for us to have good, interesting, serious bidders. I hope to see you in Haifa, and of course, you can have my phone number, you can have my mail. Anything needed will be provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Eshel. Eshel told you about the company. I will try in 3 minutes to tell you about the deal. As I should say, the Israeli government has decided to privatize the Haifa port. We are selling 100% of the shares, and we are looking for a strategic buyer. Strategic buyer can come from the world of logistic, also from a terminals operation. And all this information you can get in our website, and also in next we will give you our email and you can ask questions. But we believe that the sale will go to a consortium that combines a few entities. One of the entities can be from the strategic world, and the other can come from another world to make a synergetic value for the purchasing of the company. On the right side, you can see the information that Eshel told you about the 1 billion shekel. Like Eshel said, the first billion shekel from the sale will invest into the company, and the over 1 billion shekel will go to the government for our shares. Please, Daniel will tell you about the timeline of the deal and order you to the roadshow. Please, Daniel.
Okay, so just in a few words, the timeline in front of us. I'll just say we published the deal to the public in July, and since then we've been focusing on spreading the information, getting every information needed out there, making contacts with potential investors, and it all leads to our investors conference in the 15th of October, where we're going to have the company management and the GCA explain in more detail about the process. And in the second half of October, we're going to be holding the roadshow meetings, private meetings with interested groups in the port or online, where we're going to go into more in-depth the details of the process and about the company. All this is for the 29th of October, which is the date where we're receiving submissions of the applications. It's important to emphasize that this date is just an initial start for the process. The only things you need to hand in this date is fill in the documents we have on our website with your information and details about you. We're not going to be checking the minimum criteria that Roy and Eshel talked about, just so anyone who's interested in the process can easily join in the 29th of October and get access to the data room, sign an NDA and get access to all the information about the company, also confidential information. After 2 or 3 months in the data room, we'll be receiving the minimum criteria from the participants and their bid. We're going to have a bidding process, and a preferred buyer will be chosen. We want to finish this process until June 2021.
As Daniel said, the tender is give you the opportunity to operate a port in the Middle East until 2054. 34 years of holding the port, and we will be very happy to involve American companies, also strategic companies, and also finance companies. On October 15, we have the International Investor Conference, and also you can see it in our website and in Haifa Port website. We'll be very happy that you will join to this conference. And also, if you want, we have roadshow meetings, private meetings to tell you about the company, more information. Next. In this page, you can get all the links. We can send you the presentation after that. And also, you can get GCA, Government Companies Authority, contact details. We'll be very happy to hear you and to give you more information, as Eshel said. George?
No, thank you. This was incredibly informative. Thank you all for doing this. I know we have a few minutes left for questions. I know a lot of the questions that have come through are about the presentation and how companies or participants can contact. We'll collect this presentation and make sure it gets distributed out to all of the participants. And again, use us, feel free. We'd love to be supportive of this investors conference and the roadshow in October. So we look forward to continuing the conversation with you on that. A couple of questions that have come through, and if there are others, please submit them because we have a few minutes. From Susan Hedelman at the Department of Commerce, can you explain what the requirements are for the expression of interest of potential investors? Is there a deposit required to access the data room? What's required at the outset for companies that are interested in expressing their interest in the project to learn more?
Okay, so thank you, Josh. In our website, there's a document called the process of the sale process. And attached to that document, you can find appendixes. And in the document, I think page 17, it states exactly which appendixes you have to fill in and hand in that time. After you hand in the information, we're going to be checking just very basic stuff like anti-competition or conflicts of interest. But like I said, not minimum criteria, not experience, not anything like that. After you submit this, that's the whole of the step for the 29th of October. After that, you can be invited to the data room, and before going in the data room, you'll have to sign an NDA and put down a bank guarantee of 5 million shekels. Shekels to dollar, I think, is 3.5. And that's what you are required to do in order to get into the data room. That's all that is needed.
Great. Thanks, Danielle. Another question came from our friend David Karlbach from the World Trade Center in Utah. And there's a lot of different people from a lot of different states on the call. And the question is more perhaps for Eshel or Ofer about sort of how you structure these kinds of public-private partnerships to ensure a robust sort of return for investors, control over the services, and any lessons learned in sort of conceptualizing the Haifa plan or other infrastructure, transportation infrastructure projects from a public-private perspective.
Ofer, do you want me to start? Well, I can talk only about the Haifa port. I'd say that the first lesson is that it's selling the port, it's selling 100% of the port in order to initiate the control of the buyer on all decisions. So I think this is one lesson. And the second thing is what we have mentioned about sweetening, so-called, the deal in terms of being able to keep 1 billion shekels as part of the capital, and also the other 1 billion shekels that will come from other governmental agencies. So I'd say that the government is interested to sell the port, of course, for as much money as it can. However, we are really looking for a serious for a serious company or for a serious consortium, and that's why we have all these concessions that I just mentioned. And I think that perhaps some of it is looking back at other deals, we want to have enough competition and enough bidders. I hope that answered the question.
No, thanks, Eshel. That's helpful. Another question that's come up here and before as well is, around the bidding process and sort of the qualifications. Is the successful project chosen based on price alone, or are there other factors? And how does sort of the price fit into sort of the grand scheme of the bidding process?
I think maybe Roy will answer that.
Yes. So after you meet the minimum criteria, which is it's just like an obligatory stage of the process, the bidding process is like we're gonna be choosing the preferred buyer as for his bid on the sale position that he made. Yeah, I think that answered it. There's also I just want to add that there's, for certain investors that meet certain criteria, they can get up to 2 million shekels added to their bid if they have certain experience that we state in the governmental decision and in the documents that we referred you to. So it's gonna be on top.
Josh, I want to add that the tender is very clear. So the competition will be only for the price. It's not going to have quality stages or something like that. It's very clear, and you can get all the information by email. We can send you, and we can answer the questions. And as Daniel said, we did it very clear because we want international involvement in the privatization process, and we will be very happy if it will be American involvement of American companies.
Amen to that. Well, we appreciate your time. I know we are up at the hour, and I know it's the weekend has begun in Israel already. So I want to thank you all for your time. And
Josh, if I can interrupt,
please,
I just want to reiterate something that for me is very important to understand. Yes, the timetable is very pressing. Yes, there's a lot of data to ingest. However, on the 29th of October, you only have to show an interest and to say, I want to get more information. You don't have to come already with all the consortium members. You don't have to ask yourself, do I meet the criteria now? You don't have to, you will have enough time between the end of October and about February, March, when we actually will have the date of bidding. So I think that will give you plenty of time to learn the material and also to create in these Corona times consortium with players, with investment banks, with Israeli counterparts. So I think that the way the government has put the deal is actually clever.
That's helpful to know, that sort of the expression of interest is bare minimum at this point to actually learn more about the process. So thank you for that clarification, Eshel. And again, you know, we will look to package a lot of this content and send it around both to the folks that are on this call as well as the others that we want to get word out to. And similarly, I know that there's been comments from our partners at the Department of Commerce who also want to be helpful in promoting this project. I think more broadly on the infrastructure projects in Israel, you know, I mentioned this at the outset, but I think there's more that we could do to help organize all these different great projects so that we can package them and get them out to potential companies and investors in the U.S. We look forward to working with each of you to help do that. So thanks again for participating, and thanks to everyone who joined us on the call today. Let me wish you a Shabbat Shalom and a Gamar Chatima Tova. And I hope this is the first iteration of what will be an ongoing engagement between the Chamber and the government of Israel to promote these infrastructure projects in Israel, which I think are, you know, again, great for Israel and the growth of Israel, but also great opportunities for U.S. firms to enter the market or expand their presence in the market. So we look forward to working with you on that going forward. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.